I think the mic is mainly for the recording purposes. I don't know that it's necessarily helping you guys hear me. I did bring my teacher voice, so I will use it today. And I tend to not stay in one place, so since most of you wanted to sit in the back, I'll probably be around here most of the time so that you can be close to me and hear me. But if you ever have problems hearing, let me know. I can stand up there, and I think that mic would project audio. So if anybody has trouble, just please let me know. Also, throughout the day, just know if you ever have a question or something is too fast or you really want me to stop and demonstrate how to do something I'm talking about, just say, hey, can you show me what that would look like? And I can log in and we can walk through it. Whatever you guys need is what I want today to be. So I have some things I want to share with you, but if there's a different direction you really want to go, I'm happy to do that as well. So a little bit about me. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Education at Lenoir Rhyne University. I heard some of you trying to read the name on the program cards. It's Lenoir Rhyne. It's a small private liberal arts university in Hickory, North Carolina. And I coordinate a graduate program in online teaching and instructional design. That's what the program card is for. So we actually have a lot of community college faculty, university faculty in the program working on either a master's degree or a graduate certificate in online teaching and instructional design. So a lot of folks who are being tapped to teach online for the first time or to design an online course or to do live streaming, and they're just saying, I don't know how to do this. So we have a program for that. If you're interested in just taking a course or two or doing a graduate certificate, the graduate certificate is 18 credit hours. It's 4 courses and a practicum. That's actually how I met Kim. Kim was in one of the courses and got me connected here, so she can maybe share some of her experience. But if you're interested in talking about the program, I would love to do that. So I'm a mom to 2 kids. These are my sweet kids. That's Annie, she's 9, and Deacon, he's 6. That's the Easter picture. And I want to take a moment just to recognize that I know this is the craziest time of year. It is for me too. I know your stress level is probably at a high for where you get throughout the year. I'm the same, and your students are too. And I just appreciate you taking the time out of all the other things you need to do today to be here. And again, that's why I want to make it so helpful for you. So again, if you need me to shape it in a little bit of a different way, please let me know. Also, I wanted to share a little bit of funny with you this morning. My students, the last couple of weeks, I've had so many students to cry on me, and you know, this is just the time when all the stress comes out. So I wanted to share a little funny. This is what my students have been like lately. You can see if this connects with you.
I think it's already starting. Okay, here's your homework. First let me tell you the directions. What form takeaway 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Takeaway. What's 6 takeaway 1? 1. No, you take away, so you take away 1 out of 6. How much does it equal? What's 10 minus 1? I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nope. Take away 1. How much is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 1 more. And add 1 more. How many is it equal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1. It makes 9. See how you take away? You take away 1, and it equals 1. Mm-hmm. Do you get it now? Yes.
How many of you have seen that face before? Lately, maybe. A lot. Was it a lot better if I stay here. I feel like that audio is better. Those of you in the back? Okay, I'll try to stay here. It's hard for me, but I'll do my best. So here's where I'm planning to go for the next hour and a half or so before we break for lunch. Again, if there are other things you need to hear about, we can do that as well. I want to share with you some strategies for increasing presence in your classes, whatever those classes look like. So the strategies I'm hoping to share with you today are ones that can work whether you teach in a completely face-to-face environment, a completely online environment, a streaming environment, a blend of those environments. And I'm going to give you some examples from my courses and share some tips and tools for using video. I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of stuff today, and I don't want you to leave feeling overwhelmed or feeling like you need to do all of these things. So my goal really would be for you to think of one or two things that you can take away from today. So please don't feel like you're not doing all of these things and you have to implement all these things tomorrow or next semester. So pick and choose one or two things that you think could work really well for your students and in your context and your discipline, and try to use those. So first I want you to talk to somebody close to you about a past experience you've had as a learner. Choose something that you think is either really, really positive or really, really negative. And it could have been from an online environment, it could have been a blended, it could have been face-to-face. Whatever is something that really just stands out in your mind as being a very positive experience or a very negative experience. I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk about that experience with a neighbor and what made that so positive or so negative. As a learner, think back to a learning experience. Yes. It could have been a formal experience or it could have just been informal when you're trying to learn on your own. Think about you as a learner, your own experience. It doesn't have to be a formal experience. It could have just been a time you were trying to learn something on your own. It doesn't necessarily have to be a schooling experience. Could be, it doesn't have to be. Take about 30 seconds to wrap up. Okay, let's come back together. If you were describing a negative experience as a learner, would somebody be willing to share? What was it that made it a negative experience for you? Thank you.
I just went through clinicals with several physicians.
Okay.
And face to face, it was the derogatory and condescending attitude of some of the doctors. It was not conducive to learning.
Okay.
Because they were so. I was stupid. They knew everything, but they weren't willing to share the knowledge they had to bring me to their level. Does that make sense?
It does.
That was very negative.
I can imagine that would have been right. We're all kind of nodding our heads like, yeah, I get that. Okay, thank you for sharing. Someone else? Okay, thank you.
The pair of us, we were at New Horizons, and we were a team, and we were given an app to do video with. And we were given instructions on how to use it. We were given a green board. We didn't know how to use a green board. We'd never used one of those before. And but the whole thing was, as a team, could we figure things out with our past experiences and stuff? And it was we did figure it out in a very short period of time, and it was fun as a team.
Okay. So it was a fun experience, but you also were frustrated, it sounds like.
In the beginning we were.
Okay.
But as we got to realize it, because we didn't get to know each other, so to be with a team of people you don't know, but everyone pulled from their past experience, and we were able to figure out how to operate the camera, because we had to figure that out, how to put it on the tripod. We had to figure out all the steps, but we were able to do it in a short period of time.
Okay. It sounds like you had some characteristics from positive and negative experience in that one. So let's talk about some positive experiences. What made those experiences positive for you? Would someone be willing to share? Thanks.
I've had positive experiences with several physicians too, where they were willing to share their knowledge. Lots and lots of case scenarios in between patients, and okay, this is what you've got, and it makes you step up. It makes you think differently. It gets you thinking like a physician. So that was very positive for me. That was a good learning experience for me.
Okay, so applying it to real situations, it really matters, right? Okay. What else? Your positive experiences.
And I think the ability to be wrong too is okay.
For the instructor or for you, it was safe for you to be wrong?
It was okay for me to be wrong. You know, it was okay because it was a learning experience.
Okay. It's interesting, both of those people who were sharing out, a lot of that goes back to culture and the relationship with the learner and the instructor. So one thing I want to start out by saying today is that really there is no difference in the quality of online and face-to-face in terms of just the modality. There's not any research that's going to say one way or the other this is better. You will find a lot of research that says online is better. You will find as much research that says face-to-face is better, but it all works out in the wash, essentially. Good teaching is good teaching. So what you're describing is not about modality, right? That's about relationships and culture and the environment you build in a classroom. And what you're describing is not about the modality of the environment. A lot of times when we get asked to develop an online course or to use a streaming room or something that is out of our comfort zone, and we think, well, that can't be as effective as what I've been doing in a face-to-face setting, or you may, as a learner, have felt like, gosh, this online is just not right for me. It can't be as effective as sitting in a classroom with other people. But the research shows that that's not necessarily the case. It all comes down to the instructor. It always comes back to the instructor. Good teaching is good teaching is good teaching, regardless of the environment. So the strategy I'm going to share with you today, although a lot of them are geared toward technology-driven instruction, these are good practices. They're just good practices. And what I've heard over and over again in my own research and in the colleagues I work with is that learning to teach well in an online environment or a blended environment directly improves instruction in the face-to-face environment as well. So when folks go through some sort of formal training experience, learning how to design online courses, learning how to be effective online instructors, they say time and again that it improves their face-to-face teaching. Because there are a lot of things that naturally happen in a face-to-face environment, like right now. I can use proximity, I'm close to you, we have eye contact. There are a lot of nonverbal things happening just naturally. We have presence because we're just in the same room together. When you move that to an online environment, a lot of those things go away. And what we have to do as instructors is be more intentional about recreating those things. It's not that they can't happen, but they don't naturally happen. So we have to make it happen, and there are ways to do that. So I'm going to share some of that with you today. So we know that good teaching is good teaching. Research has shown that over and over and over again. So just as an example, we as instructors have tools in our toolbox, right? Like we have these strategies, kind of like our go-to strategies. I have a handful of strategies that I use a lot in a variety of courses. And those strategies that work really well, I can use those in whatever environment I am in. So a lot of times maybe you've been in a face-to-face classroom, and if you think back to a time when you were a learner, maybe you had an instructor who did a lot of discussion and a lot of hands-on and interaction, and then you move to an online environment and it's like I'm sitting and listening to somebody drone on and on and on with slides. Like I've had that experience where I was in a face-to-face classroom with a professor. This was in my doctoral program. And as a face-to-face instructor, she was so dynamic, really engaging. I loved being in her classes. And one week she was out of town. We did an online class, and it was like the worst experience I'd ever had. It was horrible. And so I'm just left wondering, like, how does this happen? How can the same instructor have such a different experience? And so for me, that really was the first thing that got me thinking about, well, how can we prepare people to do this online thing well? And really it comes down to just knowing how to take those good teaching practices and put them in a different environment. They can still work, but we have to know how to make that work. So for example, like think, pair, share. You guys have probably heard of think, pair, share before. It's kind of a common strategy. I like to add the right to that, think, write, pair, share, because a lot of learners need that extra processing time that writing gives before they are asked to verbally process with someone. So that's a strategy I use a lot in the face-to-face courses I teach. But I can also use that online. So if we use WebEx on our campus for our synchronous meetings and online courses, just a video conferencing platform. So if I'm in WebEx with my students, I don't have to just use slides and lecture the whole time. I can send them out to breakout rooms and have them do the think, write, pair, share in that environment. Or if I'm doing it asynchronously where students are working at their own pace, they can do that think, write, pair, share in a Google document or a discussion board on Blackboard, for example. So I can take the practices that I know that work well, that's just good teaching, and I can make it fit whatever environment I'm in. Jigsaw is another strategy I use a lot. How many of you are familiar with Jigsaw? So if you think of a jigsaw puzzle, it has these different pieces. So the goal of Jigsaw is to let students become experts in different topics and then essentially teach their peers. So you might have one group read this article and this group read that article, and they become experts on those things, and then you shuffle the groups and they teach each other. So that's something I use a lot in my face-to-face classrooms, but I can also make that work online, again, through a breakout room. There's a video tool I'm going to share with you today that I use that for. I could use Google Documents again. So you can see these strategies that we know are just good teaching. They're not solely for a face-to-face environment. There are ways we can make them work in other environments. So a lot of times online instructors just tend to say, you know, I have to completely rethink what I'm doing in this online environment. And we tend to revert to what we've experienced. So if you've had a bad online experience, that might be all you know. Maybe you've only ever seen an online instructor lecture. You know, maybe you've only seen an online instructor just post chapters and quizzes, chapters and quizzes, chapters and quizzes, and you've never had that experience interacting, what that might look like. So we tend to do what we know. So I'm hoping to share with you some examples to help you think about what that might look like. So I want to frame this around 3 essentials from the research that we know are critical for student learning in any environment. These really grew out of the research on online learning because, again, like I mentioned earlier, these are things that often will naturally happen in a face-to-face setting, but won't naturally happen in an online setting. So we have to be more intentional. But these are things that are absolutely critical: social presence, teacher presence, and cognitive presence. So I want to break down for you what the research says about these and share examples and strategies of how to increase levels of presence in your learning environment. So there's this framework by Anderson and Garrison that ties these specific types of interaction to these specific types of presence. So they have researched for years to essentially say, we know what builds social presence, and we know what builds teacher presence, and we know what builds cognitive presence, and this is what it is. So I'm going to sort of structure the rest of the session by these 3 categories. So in order to build social presence, in your classroom, whatever your classroom looks like, you need to have student-to-student interaction. And that kind of makes sense. You're like, duh, right? So if I'm going to have social presence with my students, they have to have an opportunity to interact with each other. If I want to build teacher presence, then my students have to interact with me. Again, that's like, duh, okay, we know that. And to build cognitive presence, that is to get my students connecting cognitively with the content, I need students interacting with content, okay? So those are 3 things that you can say, hey, I need to improve social presence, so I'm going to add more interaction with my students. Or I need to really focus on improving cognitive presence, so I'm going to think about more ways students can interact with content. So those can give you sort of direct goals to work on. So what I want to do now is walk through each of those 3 areas of presence and share with you some ways you might incorporate more of those types of interaction in your classes. So social presence is defined in this way. It's the degree to which students feel they're interacting with real people. Again, in a face-to-face setting, that is just a natural. It just happens. I can see you over there. I know you're a real person. You have a body. You're not just a head on a screen. In the online environment, a lot of times students don't feel this way. Have you ever been in an online environment where you had no idea about the other learners in the space? Yeah, some of you are nodding your heads. Yes, I have definitely been in that environment. So it's this degree to where students understand that there are other real learners in this environment and that they're interacting with those people. We know that learning is a social thing. Whether we choose to act on that or not, it's real. That's a research-based principle of good teaching. We know that learners are social beings. We are social, our students are social, so we need to attend to that in our design. So some ways you can do that. Use humor and emotion, like starting class out with a funny video or something. It's a great way to build social presence, to get students comfortable. You were sharing earlier, a lot of your experiences kind of went back to this idea of the social presence in the environment. So using humor and emotion can help with that. You can do that in a face-to-face classroom. You can do that online. I love to use memes and GIFs and things like that with my students and have them create them as well. At the start of synchronous meetings sometimes, for example, in WebEx, I'll ask everyone to create a meme using just a free meme generator. Create a meme that represents how you're feeling at this point in the semester. And it's really funny to see what they come up with. And it gives them a chance just to be like, okay, we're all real people here. You know, we're all feeling stressful, or we all have busy lives, we have things going on. So instead of just pretending like that's not a thing, we just acknowledge it. Another key strategy for social presence is to build in time for social conversation and social learning. Again, it's something that naturally happens in a face-to-face environment. A lot of you came in early, got the back row, and chit-chatted for a while. You had time to just talk about you're talking about your families, you're talking about your classes, and talking about things. That naturally happens in a face-to-face environment. It doesn't necessarily happen naturally in an online environment, but we can make it happen. We can build in more opportunities for that. And maybe even in our face-to-face environment, we're not including enough of that. So I like to use some free social spaces to give students a chance to just interact in a social way outside of the content, to try to recreate that thing that naturally happens when students come into a space together. So like Google Communities is a great free space that I like to use for that. Almost all of my students have a Gmail account. Well, they all have a Gmail account through the university, but they almost all have a personal one as well. And so we use Google Communities just to have an informal space where they can share what they're learning. They can share pictures of their friend's wedding. Like they can share things about their dog or whatever they want to share. And there are other spaces that they can use for that. There's some great mobile apps. GroupMe is one I'm going to share later that my students prefer. Almost every semester they ask, can we use that tool? I'm going to share that one with you a little bit later. Another way the research suggests to build social presence is to provide personalized feedback. Personalized feedback takes a lot of time. So I would not encourage you to give personalized feedback on every single thing your students turn in. But pick the thing that is really important, the assignment that's really big or really closely aligned to this major learning outcome that you need them to master, and give personalized feedback on that. I definitely don't take the time to do personalized feedback on everything. Sometimes it's copy and paste, or maybe I have a rubric and I'm just using that. But when I do take the time to record a quick video maybe, or just to send a personal message, helping students connect the content to something happening in their personal lives or their work, because I'm working with adult learners, they have jobs and lives, and I get to know that about them, so I can help them connect their learning. When I take the time to do that, I get great feedback from them. They really appreciate that, and it helps them sort of own that learning experience. And they know that I recognize they're real people with real lives outside of school. So that's just one example. A student had submitted a blog post for an assignment, and I just left little thought bubbles on it with a screencasting tool. It's really easy to do that. I'm going to share some tools later that you can do that with. Again, instead of just me giving sort of generic feedback, I'm able to point out specific things that I know about her and her writing and give her that kind of personal feedback so she knows that I recognize her as a unique individual and I want to take the time to do that. Again, I wouldn't do that level of feedback on everything that is submitted. There's another example where I just copied and pasted chunks from a student's work and left some thought bubbles there. I have some video examples I'm going to share with you in just a moment. And if you're in an online environment, video is a great way to get that student-to-student interaction going. All those other strategies so far were not video-based, but it can be really helpful and powerful to have them see and hear each other. And I get feedback from students a lot about how much they value that time. One of my favorite tools in all of my classes, but specifically for social presence, is Flipgrid. So it's flipgrid.com. I'm going to talk about Flipgrid a lot today, actually. So there's a free version of Flipgrid and there's a paid version, and I'll sort of talk about the difference in a little bit. But essentially what Flipgrid does is it lets you create a grid like this where you post a topic and then students record short video responses to the topic. So you have a prompt, sort of like a discussion board, but it's video-based instead of text-based. It's mobile as well, so students can respond from whatever device they have, which is great because our learners have so many different kinds of devices. Some of them prefer to be sitting on a desktop at home. Some of them are always on the go and they want something that works on their cell phone. A lot of my college students want to be on their cell phones, so the more we can connect with them, the better. So this app lets me just post a prompt, send it out, and I can determine the time frame they have to respond, up to a maximum of 3 minutes, or as short as 90 seconds, so anywhere in that time frame. So it's quick. They're recording a quick video. They get a chance to watch it, so they don't like it, they can record it again. And then they get to see each other, hear each other, and they can click on a video, watch it, and then leave comments. They can like each other's videos, and they can comment on each other's videos. And I've gotten such great feedback from students about using that tool, Flipgrid. They like that it works on their cell phones, and they like getting to see and hear from each other. And it's short and sweet. I mean, 3 minutes is not that much time, but it's nice to hear from them. And you can have, just one thing I would recommend is to have a Flipgrid or something like that set up just for social conversation. So they don't all have to be tied to the content. Most of the time when I use it, it is tied to the content. You read this chapter and post on the Flipgrid. But I'll also have one on the course Canvas page. We use Canvas, but on the Blackboard page, just have one that is generic. So whenever you have news you want to share, or you're struggling with something, or you want some advice, just post it here, and they have that sort of social space. Again, that helps me recreate what would naturally happen if we were in a classroom together. There's another example of Flipgrid that I used for student group assignments. Each group had their own grid, so they were able to share some research they had done on their own with the members of their group and have that small group discussion. There's a lot of research that supports the use of small group discussion, particularly in larger classes. This is a big class. I had 32 students in that, and it wasn't realistic to have everyone present their work to the whole class. So the small group through Flipgrid worked really well. And then the student-to-student interaction with video also works synchronously. So we use WebEx, like I mentioned. Do you guys have a synchronous tool like that that you might use if you're in an online setting? Collaborate, right. Blackboard has Collaborate. So similar to that, it's similar to Collaborate. It's like a webinar type space. So you have your main meeting space, but you can also send folks out into breakout rooms like I mentioned earlier. And I encourage students to use their webcams in that space again. So we get that video, we get the social presence. I get the feeling like there are other learners in here with me. I can see their faces and hear their voices, and I'm not out here on my own. And this is a video that one of my students actually recorded to give peer feedback to another student in the class. So peer feedback is another way to increase social presence by giving that student-to-student interaction. A lot of times I build in opportunities for student peer feedback, and students will primarily use text for that. But I had one student who appreciated the videos I had created for feedback so much that he decided to give the same level of video feedback to his peers. So he would open the peers' work and use a screencasting tool called Screencast-O-Matic. He just recorded what was on his screen and talked about it, and then sent the video feedback to his peer. So he took the time to do that because he valued that I took the time to do that for him. And again, students get to hear each other's voices and see each other. I'm a real person. This person really cares about me and took the time to create this personalized feedback. And again, I'm going to share with you some more video tools later and some features. And Screencast-O-Matic is one of the ones I'll be sharing. So I want to give you a second just to process what we've been looking at so far related to social presence and student-to-student interaction. So first, I want you to just think and process on your own, and then I'm going to ask you to share with a partner. So we're kind of going to do a think, write, pair, share. First, just think about your responses to these questions. How often do you incorporate student-to-student interaction? In what ways do you provide opportunities for social conversation, and how do you get to know your learners? So think about those questions, reflect on your own. If you want to jot it down, you can, or just sort of think about it. And then in a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn and talk with somebody close to you. You graduate next week? Well, a week after next. Yeah, he's almost done. He's ready to be done. So go ahead, share your own strategies in whatever setting you're in. Yeah, if you're online, or if you're face-to-face, or if you're doing both, how do you do these things? get that all the time. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So you're going to have some students who really do. You're going to have some students who really don't. I'm a fan of providing pathways. I'm actually doing that in one of my summer courses. I'm going to have a completely go your own pace sort of thing. If you want to do this, here's everything you need to do and go. And especially in the summer, a lot of people want to do that because they're traveling and they need to work around stuff. And if you want to go week by week and you want to do this, then here's this pathway. And I'm letting them choose. So I have it built that way. Same here, yes. But, I mean, I think we can always give them a choice, and some of them are going to choose to do that because they want that interaction. Some are going to choose to just get my work done and be done with it. But I think there's some value in forcing them to do that, even when they don't want to. Yeah. But that's a great question. Right. You would in a face-to-face. You wouldn't give them an option of not, right? Yeah. You can opt out of this. Right. But a lot of times our online learners are there because of the flexibility and the convenience, and they really want that specifically. So I understand your question. Possibly, yeah. Yeah. Let's come back together. I want to share a really great question that came out of this group's conversation. Can you tell me your names? Ken and Brandy. So they had a great question. What about the online learners who really just want to move through the class, work at their own pace, and they don't want to slow down and wait for other people? And I struggle with that too. This semester has been my absolute worst for that. I've been rethinking a lot of things. And so one thing I shared with them as a solution for that is something I'm trying this summer. I have 2 different pathways in this one online course I'm teaching this summer. So students who want that, they have a vacation plan later in the summer, so they want to just fly through. They can do that. They can take this path. Here's everything you need. Go for it. And the ones who want to kind of go week by week, have more interaction with me and their peers, they can take that pathway. So I'm giving them a choice. I had to design that option, but that's one strategy for that. Do you guys have any suggestions or strategies or thoughts about that question? It's a great question.
So what did you do? Did you set up like, if they want to go straight through and require these others to do videos? Because more than likely they're not going to socialize with everybody else. That week's graded, you have to give weeks before you're another assignment, you just want to go straight through.
Right, so I'm making everybody do video reflections on the text. So they have to read a certain number of chapters and reflect through video. They're either just submitting the video to me or they're posting it to a social space for other people. So they're doing the same thing. They're just either sending it to me or they're putting it on a social space for everybody else. They're going to do the very same things. Some of them are going to get that interaction with their peers and some of them aren't. So maybe if I come back next year, I can share with you how that goes. That'll be my first time doing that. Because this semester, I had some students who were slowing down everyone else, and some of my students were getting really frustrated with that. And we know that a lot of our online learners are there because they want the flexibility, they want the convenience, they want to get things done when they can get things done, and they don't want to have to wait for other people. So I know that's a real struggle. Any other thoughts or suggestions or strategies for that? One thing we pointed out is if those students were in a face-to-face environment, would you give them the choice to opt out? We probably wouldn't, would we? Like, we wouldn't say, okay, we're all going to do a jigsaw, and if you want to sit over there, you can. Right? Like, we would force that. So I think there is some value to sometimes forcing that online. And yes, we all prefer different things. Our learners, we are all different learners, and some of us would really prefer to be doing something else right now or learning in a different modality. And sometimes you just have to do what the instructor says. Sometimes you just have to force that because you know research shows that students need interaction online. So even if you think you don't want it, I know it's a good thing, so I'm going to force you here. But I think there is some value in being flexible.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that something you could set up your groups from the first that you thought, because this group is going to work better together because they're going to be early on everything? Is that a questionnaire you could start your class with?
Absolutely.
Like,
You could have them
groups.
a learning style sort of inventory. There are a lot of those online. And then based on your results, self-select this group or this pathway. I've already set up my groups for summer, but they're open for sign up. So I have these groups and I have this individual pathway, and Canvas has a place where students can self-select groups. So they're just going to sign up as soon as the semester starts and get going with that. But yeah, to help them process on what kind of learner, maybe they need that support. So a questionnaire or something at the beginning, that's a great idea. Okay.
So I'm teaching my first online course this semester, and I guess one thing that kind of worries me just a little bit is, testing the students. And, students are like, oh, can I take the test early? And I'm like, no, you can't do that because I'm worried about those testing questions getting out. So what are your, teaching online, what are your suggestions for that?
Yeah, so there have been times where I would say that same thing, like these are the testing dates, and even if you're pacing ahead or kind of behind, like these are the benchmarks you need to be prepared for. And I think that's a real world skill that our students need, right? Like there are deadlines, you have to be able to meet them. But also, I know Blackboard is probably similar. In Canvas, I can build a big test bank, and then I can have it sort of generate different tests for each person. So I wouldn't necessarily have to worry about them getting the same questions. If I had enough questions in this bank, they're each going to kind of get a unique experience with the assessment. I think you can go either way with that. Other thoughts or questions related to interaction and social presence? Student-to-student interaction specifically? What did you share in your groups? What are some strategies or tools you have in your toolbox that you use for this? I love it. Thank you.
Now, there's a bunch of nursing people in here, and I know they're not quiet. In diet nutrition, we have them post a picture or an image that represents who they feel they are, and then they make a comment on it. And I was telling Sabrina one semester, this is a good memory for me. We had a gentleman, he was dressed up as Caesar. I'm assuming he was in drama of some sort, but he was in a full blown out Caesar Augustus costume. And I commented on that, and he was real pleased that I had actually, it's another one of those social things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we really look at the pictures, we really do, comment on those, we really are looking at these things. So, but we do, that's an introduction thing that we do.
That's a great example. Thank you. Other strategies or tools you use for that? It doesn't have to be online. What about in a face-to-face classroom? What are some ways you get your students interacting with each other?
We eat lunch together as nursing instructors usually because we're in clinical with them. So that's where we get to really know our students.
Yeah. So you have that social time sort of just built into the structure of what you're doing. That's great. So that really impacts what you were saying earlier about your negative experience, getting that relationship and sort of building trust with your instructors. That happens through social conversation. That doesn't happen through the content instruction. That happens through the social interactions.
Do you have any suggestions on how to do interactions like that? Because me and Kim, we do the open entry, open exit. Like I'll have a student in week 1, week 5, week 8, whatever.
Right.
And it's kind of hard for them to, you got one in week 8, well, he's not going to want to go back to week 1 work and
Right.
comment. So any suggestions?
Yeah, in that situation, I would tend to use a post that is just generic, that wherever you are in the class, you should be able to respond to this. It might be a more social thing, but it can be a content-related thing, but maybe a big picture idea that wherever you are in the semester, you should have some thoughts related to that idea. I might avoid tying it to, right, so trending topics, things like that.
So you could always throw out current event type things, because I do that a lot with my students. I'll send out, I get something from the Board of Health about the Zika virus. I'll send it out to all the students, and they'll get to talking about what they read from the
Yeah, and that could be really interesting because if you have students who are further along in the content, they're probably going to give a more nuanced, complex response, and that could be beneficial for your newer students, but your newer students might have a perspective that your students who are farther into the content don't have, so it could be a really interesting conversation. I would tie it less to the weeks, you know, and more just big picture ideas that anybody should be able to speak to. So we're going to switch gears to the second type of presence. What we know from the research is that social presence has to come first. Like, it's the prerequisite for everything else. There's a really great TED Talk, I will share it with you later if we have time, from Rita Pearson. It's wonderful. Have any of you seen this? She's talking about how kids don't learn from people they don't like. It's all about building relationships. I can't think of the name of it. It's fantastic. It's pretty short, really powerful. I share it with my pre-service teachers a lot. But essentially this idea that the learning doesn't happen if there's not this trust, respect. You know, we don't have a relationship with our instructors. Yes, we can learn some content, but we're really going to be limited in that. So social presence is the first thing that we have to get right. Once we get that right, we can start building teacher presence. So social presence is absolutely critical, but we know it's not enough. Like, just having lunch with our students isn't going to get them where we need them to, right? So it's important, and it's first. It has to be first. We have to get that right first, but it's not enough. So we also need to have teacher presence. So we know that there's a need for the teacher to shape the online experience, just as there's a need for the teacher to shape the face-to-face experience. So the teacher is needed in that shaping and guiding, and that's known as teaching presence. And just like with social presence, this is a little harder to do online because there are things that naturally happen in a face-to-face classroom. I ask you guys to talk about strategies, and I'm walking around and I stop and answer questions, and I'm responding and I'm commenting. That sort of naturally happens when we're in this room. That is teacher presence. That's me sort of shaping the conversation and responding to your questions and strategies. And online, we have to do that as well, but it doesn't naturally happen in that way. So there are some strategies we can use to do that. One way is to share personal examples from your own experience. So you're working with clinicals with students, and you clearly have your own experiences that you can share with them. And if you've taken the time to build social presence with them, they're going to respect and learn from your personal experiences that you're sharing. My students love to hear examples from my kids. This is a video I love to share when I'm talking about augmented reality and virtual reality with my students. I think this will play. Oh, maybe not. I might have this video later somewhere. This is a video of my son doing, he's riding a roller coaster with this thing called the Google Cardboard that lets them put your phone into this device. It's just a box. It's a cardboard box, essentially. And the phone is in there, and so he's riding a roller coaster, and he's like, you know, he's really funny. I'll try to find it later. So that's a great way, just sharing those kinds of personal examples to help students connect with you as a person. One really key thing to do in the online environment is to model what an effective contribution looks like. A lot of times we assume that students know how to respond to a discussion board or know how to give feedback to their peers, and when we assume, you know what happens. So we really shouldn't do that. And in a face-to-face environment, there are some assumptions we make as well, but I think online maybe more. So we can model, here's what it looks like to comment on a peer's blog post, for example. Here's what it looks like to contribute to a discussion board. So modeling those appropriate contributions is a really key part of teacher presence, particularly online. So here I'm modeling like how to sort of shape the conversation, how to respond, instead of just saying, oh, great idea, I really like what you said, you know, which is kind of what they want to do, and just move on. I can model what a really thoughtful contribution looks like. I also try to use a lot of video for that student-to-teacher interaction so that they get to see me and hear my voice. In courses where I've tried to be primarily asynchronous, like you guys were saying, like let students work on their own, 9 times out of 10, my students ask me for this. They want that FaceTime. They want either a whole class meeting, or they want a one-on-one, or they love the videos. They just want to see and hear, like, there's a teacher giving me feedback, or there's a teacher kind of guiding this experience. I'm not out here on my own. And there are a lot of ways to do that. So one way I do that is most of the time with my courses, I will create a digital syllabus. So just at the beginning of the semester, they have this visual of what the semester is going to look like, and I walk them through it piece by piece. And I tend to do that with video. So I have a few different ways I do that. One way I do that is I create an infographic, which looks complicated, but it's so easy. And I'll share this tool with you in a little bit. This is PictoChart, P-I-K-T-O chart, PictoChart. It's a free tool. There is a paid version, but you can do everything you need to do with the free version. You can choose a template. So I just chose a template, and you just go in and change your text and change the pictures if you want. So I just put like the big ideas for the syllabus, the big course ideas or the big assignments on an infographic like that. And then I record little videos of me explaining the different pieces, so that if students want to hear more about this assignment or more about the course calendar or more about the text they're going to be reading, they can get that from me. And that's one thing that my students have found really helpful. I also mentioned personalized feedback, so I'll often take the time to record a short screencast. It might only be 2 minutes. This one's 3.5 minutes long. So I pulled up this student's work, and there you can see my webcam, so she gets to see my face, she gets to hear my voice, and she gets to see me commenting directly on her work. And that's really powerful. And again, I wouldn't do this on everything that's submitted, but I would take select things throughout the semester and take the time to give that type of feedback. I use just screencasting software. I'm going to share with you some of those that are free or cheap that you can use to just record those short little videos to give feedback. Another free tool I like to use is Telegami. It's an app, so it's a tablet app. It doesn't work on a computer. You can play it from a computer, but to create the video, you have to use the app. You can do it on your phone or your tablet. And you choose an avatar, you choose a background, and then you just talk, and it makes your avatar talk, and it adds little gestures and things like that. Or you can type it, but it has kind of a robot-y voice. It's a lot better if you use your own voice. I will tell you, I don't get as good feedback from my students about Telegami as I do when I do this. They really would prefer to see me commenting on their work. That's what they keep telling me. They want to see this, and they don't prefer this as much because it's essentially just audio. You know, they don't get to see my face, and they really like this. But I often will use this instead of personalized feedback. I might use a Telegami to just introduce them to a new module, introduce a new topic, because I can make my character be outside if I'm introducing something about water quality in the streams, or I can make my character be at a restaurant if we're talking about etiquette. You know, I can make it look like a real-life situation, so it's a good way to kind of introduce an idea or a topic. The videos are short. I think 3 minutes is your max. So just a quick intro, kind of a hook, and I tend to use it more in that way. So what are some ways that you, whether you're in a face-to-face or hybrid or online environment, think and talk with somebody? What are some ways that you interact with students to build that teacher presence, either collectively or individually? And how do you see your role in kind of guiding and shaping that learning experience? So share some ideas, some strategies about how you do those things. Okay, let's come back together. So what strategies or tools do you use to add teacher presence, to have that interaction between students and teachers? What are some strategies or tools in your toolbox for that? Or questions or challenges, things you're struggling with? Oh, so I was wondering, can you share some strategies or tools you use for interacting with students or building teacher presence?
I'll go. It's been a minute, Chuck. We do respond to discussion board. Not all of them, but we try to put a little personal note in there. You know, hey, I like French fries, because I'm talking about diet nutrition. It's our online class. Prompt email responses. I get a lot of feedback from students about if they email me, I'm really quick to get back to them on email. By the end of the day, I will have responded and have an answer for their emails. And then grading too. There's a lot of comments on it takes too long, or, you know, hey, I really like the way you grade. You get things done within the week. I know what I need to do next time, that type of thing.
Yeah, okay. That's great. So being prompt as an instructor in the online environment is important, and communicating to students, this is how long you can expect, you know, this is when you can expect to get feedback. Here's how long you can expect to wait for an email response. That's great. Other strategies, even in a face-to-face environment or a hybrid environment?
I've tried to collaborate. I do collaborate on snow days in my face-to-face classes, so we
Okay.
don't miss a day. But online, I've tried those synchronous collaborate sessions. They just don't respond to that.
Okay.
There'll be very few that will log in and do that, so.
We use Google Docs and Google Sheets. When I in class, Google Sheets, of course, we're in the classroom, but the students can see each other working. Like jump on somebody else's sheet, messing it up, or somebody will be on their sheet without even really knowing they're on the sheet. Before I know it, they're in the chat room with their chat. I something really like that.
Okay.
For some reason.
So Google Documents, Google Sheets.
It's like a spreadsheet, like Excel, but everybody has, just log in. You know, what we do is we create a sheet. So it's pulling up all over the classroom.
Yeah, so Google Docs is really great for that interaction, whether you're in a face-to-face or online environment, because that can happen in real time, synchronously. You know, you can have a lot of people in the same document, or asynchronously. You can have people logging in at different times and working on their own pace. So that really is well suited for either format you're using.
I use Google, all their apps a whole lot, because I teach with media and here actually.
Okay.
So I'm broadcasting to Virginia Highlands, and I'm teaching that class along with my face-to-face class. And the ones at Highlands tend to tune out or kind of go away and go to La La Land. So sometimes they'll have to work together in like a Google Doc or a sheet. Just things like that. They'll have a case study, and sometimes I'll give them between the two campuses. They have to communicate within the chat room or the doc, and they might be on two different campuses, but they have to collaborate and talk about what their answers are. Kind of like the Think, Fair, Share, but through that, because the mics and talking back and forth, it gets difficult sometimes.
Right.
So we use that a lot.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. So Google Drive is a great strategy for connecting those students across campuses. Like you mentioned, the audio, the video might not work so well if you have a lot of students trying to interact with other students, but asynchronously or synchronously with text is great. So Google Drive is a really nice option for that. Any other thoughts or questions? Like, how do you address this issue?
I know one, doing a lot of the online classes, I try to figure out in the introductions of the students what they like to do or what, and then try to, I guess, teaching like Word and Excel, giving examples of what they like to do. I mean, like I had one semester that actually liked doing motocross.
Okay.
So I took one of the assignments and actually sort of tailored it to a motocross type Excel spreadsheet and let the whole class work on that, but sort of try to gear something toward that student to show that, hey, yeah, I did read all your posts and try to give them examples of that so they can run the thing.
That's excellent. Students are going to learn from you so much more because you take the time to do that. So he was sharing that he found out what students were interested in and then tailored an assignment toward that interest. That's excellent. So what we're going to do now is take a break. There are refreshments still in the back. Use the restroom if you need to. And right after the break, we have a surprise. So take a few minutes of a break and then come back excited for that. Yes, there's a surprise.
How